All women are different, but they are all women. This video is androcentric from a men's point of view and is presented as opinion, commentary, and debate. Expressing opinions is not violence. These are ideas to challenge, question, and argue in public, because classical liberalism relies on the First Amendment for its dialectic. If you are a feminist, then consider this. If patriarchy truly existed as claimed, feminism could not. And if all men are trash and women are equal to men, then what are we to conclude? Women will die for their children. Men will die for their wives and children, and God chose to die for all mankind. Authority rolls up with responsibility. If this framing of facts offends you, click off to a cute cat video. Proceeding further will expose you to gamma bias and criticism directed at ideas, claims, institutions, not at any individual's virtue or dignity. Our method follows the 7 liberal arts, the trivium, grammar, logic, rhetoric, and the quadrivium, arithmetic, geometry, music, and astronomy, and the transcendentals, the good, true, and beautiful. If this framework is not for you, feel free to exit now. It's no disgrace. Women are wonderful. God bless America. Men are great. Feminismus delendus est. Karan Cabal, Resentment Ideology, Poisoning the Well, written by Connie Riker, available now, links in description. The Sacrament of the Void, How Matriarchy Weaponized Hysteria, and the left's quest to trade the womb for an empty apartment, and a cat exposed the suicidal blueprint of female resentment. A woman walks into a clinic. She is crying. She tells the doctor she feels broken, shattered, fundamentally unwell. The physician, a man which in the cosmology we are about to autopsy is already an original sin, orders blood tests. He runs a thyroid panel. He checks her iron, her cortisol, her inflammatory markers. He is looking for a physical cause for physical suffering, because that is what physicians have done since Hippocrates, and before Hippocrates, since the first healer pressed his hand to a fevered forehead and wondered why. The woman leaves a 1-star review, dismissed, invalidated, traumatized by the medical-industrial complex. A manifesto is written. The manifesto declares that the blood tests were epistemic violence, that the thermometer is a phallic weapon, that the woman's tears are the only metric of justice, and that to question her narrative is to commit discursive assault. I checked the publication twice to confirm it wasn't a parody. It was not a parody. And the ideology that produced it currently staffs your HR department, writes your child's curriculum, and operates the family court that will strip you of your children on an unverified allegation while garnishing your wages for the privilege of visiting them twice a month. Watch this ideology destroy itself in 3 moves. Premise 1. All claims about reality require evidence. This writer makes claims about reality. Medicine is patriarchal. Biology is a prison. Female distress is cosmically diagnostic. These are factual assertions competing for your belief. Premise 2. The claim feeling is fact is itself a claim about reality, which by premise 1 requires evidence beyond the mere feeling that it is true. If you deny premise 1, you forfeit the right to make any claim about anything, including the claim that premise 1 is wrong. She is using rational argument to prove rational argument is patriarchal violence. She is deploying logic to assassinate logic, like a man shooting his own foot to prove guns don't exist. This is not philosophy, it is intellectual seppuku performed for academic credit. I will grant the writer her partial truth, because honesty is a weapon the strong can afford and the manipulator cannot. Women's health complaints have been historically undertreated. Autoimmune diagnosis requires an average of 4 years and 4 physicians. Women presenting with acute cardiac symptoms receive less aggressive intervention than men with identical presentations. These are documented, empirical, correctable failures of practice, not of principle. The remedy is better data, wider study cohorts, sex-specific pharmacological research. The remedy is not to burn the laboratory and install the crying woman as the new microscope. Every pre-modern civilization already ran the epistemic regime that article demands, authoritative narrative overriding observable physiology. They called it humoral imbalance, demonic possession, divine displeasure. Millions died in agony. The scientific method did not emerge from a patriarchal conspiracy to silence women's feelings. It emerged from the corpses of those millions, including the women who died because anyone's feelings, are not a diagnostic instrument. You are alive to denounce the patriarchy because the patriarchy invented aseptic technique and your great-grandmother survived childbirth because of it. Then the mask drops. Abortion is no longer a grim necessity, but a sacrament of absolute autonomy. Motherhood is not the biological and civilizational foundation of every society that has ever endured, but a domestic plantation. The supreme achievement of the liberated female, we are told with straight face and spiced latte, is an empty apartment, a middle management title, and a cat, an animal that will begin eating your face approximately 72 hours after you die alone and undiscovered. This is not a political program, it is a death cult in seasonal knitwear. Every civilization that adopted this ethic, Japan, South Korea, Scandinavia, every cosmopolitan capital in Western Europe is now in demographic free fall, importing labor from cultures that explicitly rejected it. Because a philosophy requiring its adherents to sterilize themselves as proof of commitment is a philosophy with a built-in expiration date. The future belongs to whoever shows up. She has announced with considerable autumnal pride that she will not. What follows is not a rant. It is a clinical, syllogistic, line-by-line dismantling of every claim in that article, using the very instruments its writer wishes to abolish: definition, evidence, logic, telos, and the accumulated genius of the civilization that gave you anesthesia, the rule of law, the university, and the vocabulary she is currently weaponizing against the men who built all four. She says, your logic is her trauma. I say her trauma is not your jurisdiction, her comfort is not your constitution, and the sterile void she worships is not your inheritance. You were built for a civilization. Let us begin. Bunkum article by a feminist PhD. There is a particular crispness in the autumn air that signals the dying breath of the patriarchal logarithm. As the leaves decay, so too must the rigid phallic structures of male logic, merit, and objective truth. We find ourselves wrapping up in our oversized sweaters, not merely as an aesthetic choice, but as a political tactic, a literal insulation against the chilling, violent grasp of male rationality. We sip our fall flavors, sweet and spiced, a warm liquid rebellion against the bitter, tasteless gruel of Western civilization. Let us be absolutely clear. Your facts are our trauma. For centuries, the medical-industrial complex has been a primary theater of epistemic violence against women. The archaic phallocentric obsession with empirical evidence, blood tests, and diagnostics is nothing more than a gaslighting campaign designed to dismiss the supreme authority of the female mood. When a woman presents to a doctor in a state of tearful, hysterical paralysis, the medical establishment, rooted in toxic, masculine rigidity, seeks a physical pathology. They do not understand that the feeling is the fact. The female emotional weather system is the ultimate barometer of reality. If a woman feels broken, it is because the structural cosmos has fractured her. We no longer demand equal treatment. We demand total epistemic surrender. I propose the total abolition of objective medicine in favor of matripathy, the revolutionary framework wherein female distress, regardless of physical etiology, is instantly recognized as systemic moral injury, requiring immediate institutional appeasement. Under matripathy, the crying woman is not a patient to be diagnosed. She is a divine oracle whose tears are the only metric of justice. To question her narrative is to commit an act of discursive violence. Nowhere is this systemic betrayal more evident than in the violent discourse surrounding reproductive ethics. The biological essentialists and patriarchal colonizers have long framed motherhood as a natural imperative. Trapping women in the unpaid extractive labor of child-rearing, we must smash this archaic illusion. The maternal instinct is a socialized trauma response, a psychological chain meant to bind women to the domestic plantation. True liberation requires a total norm erosion in how we view reproduction. Abortion must not be framed as a difficult, tragic choice. It is a sacrament of absolute autonomy. It is the ultimate, glorious refusal of the biological essentialist prison. To extinguish a potential life in favor of maintaining an empty apartment, a high-powered career, and the companionship of a cat is the highest expression of revolutionary will. It is the defiant declaration that we will not be vessels for the male genetic legacy. We will not merge our identities with the parasitic colonization of the unborn. We choose the void of the self over the demands of the species. And what of the man? The male oppressor is permanently trapped in a Kobayashi Maru of his own making. He is required by the new teleological imperative to be an Ellie, yet his very existence is an act of microaggression. He must provide the resources, the tax dollars, and the infrastructural labor that keeps our therapeutic state running, while simultaneously stripping himself of all authority, voice, and representation. He must fund his own obsolescence. If he speaks, he is dominating. If he is silent, he is complicit. This is not a flaw in the system. This is the totalizing victory of the maternal hive mind. We demand total responsibility from men, coupled with absolute subjugation and zero authority. We will use the soft, suffocating totalitarianism of human resources, the academic grievance studies departments, and the carceral state to enforce this new paradigm. We will turn every school into a consciousness-raising session, every workplace into a struggle session, and every public square into an arena of public shame for the cis-heteronormative phalanx. Wrap yourself in the wool of the collective. Drink the nectar of our resentful triumph. The future belongs to those who can weaponize their fragility. Your logic is my trauma. My comfort is your law. The suicide of the serum, how matriarchy refutes itself. I once watched a man die on a cold emergency room floor because the triage nurse assumed his profuse sweating and silence were merely anxiety, while a screaming patient with a paper cut was attended to immediately. The squeaky wheel gets the grease, but the quiet man got the morgue. This is the fatal flaw of prioritizing noise over objective symptomology. The manifesto of madness before us demands we institutionalize this lethal inversion, playing a sick semantic game where words are surgically detached from reality and weaponized against the rational mind. Consider the linguistic fraud perpetrated in the text. Trauma is inflated from its proper definition. Severe physical or psychological injury to mean any encounter with disagreement or accountability. Violence is stripped of its physical reality and redefined to include the mere act of questioning a narrative or asking for a blood test. Safety is abducted from its meaning of freedom from bodily threat and perverted into a demand for total insulation from cognitive friction. This is not communication. It is a spell designed to paralyze your discernment, stealing words with undeniable moral gravity and filling them with the helium of hurt feelings. At the rotting core of this text is the epistemological claim that female feeling constitutes supreme truth, while empirical evidence is denounced as epistemic violence. Let us trace this etymology to its root. The Greek episteme means justified, stable knowledge. To label empirical inquiry epistemic violence is a performative contradiction so grotesque it would make a classical philosopher retch. The writer borrows the vocabulary of knowledge to justify the destruction of knowledge, much like using a scalpel to argue that scalpels do not exist. The argument defeats itself the second it is voiced. Consider the syllogism, premise 1. All claims about reality require evidence to be considered true. Premise 2. The claim feeling is fact is a claim about reality. Conclusion. Therefore, the claim feeling is fact requires evidence beyond the feeling itself. It is self-referentially incoherent. It is a book whose only argument for its own truth is that it declares itself true. If reality is merely a projection of mood, then the claim that reality is a projection of mood is itself merely a mood subject to change with the next hormonal fluctuation or Twitter trend. We must apply the test of telos, or ultimate purpose, to this matriarchy. The telos of medicine is healing, achieved through the rigorous cycle of accurate diagnosis, effective treatment, and measurable recovery. This requires the subjugation of the physician's ego and the patient's feelings to the objective reality of the microscopic slide. The telos of matriarchy, however, is not the health of the body, but the appeasement of the patient's ego through institutional submission. These purposes are diametrically opposed. One serves the organism, the other serves the narcissism of the organism. A civilization that adopts matriarchy will not survive long enough to die of ideological boredom. It will die of untreated appendicitis, mass infection, and systemic medical collapse. You do not fix a miscalibrated compass by smashing the glass and declaring that your panic is north. Do not mistake this for mere intellectual confusion. It is a deliberate metaphysical attack. The writer confesses their true aim with startling clarity. We no longer demand equal treatment, we demand total epistemic surrender. Read that sentence and understand the gravity of the declaration. The mask has slipped. This is not a quest for justice, remedy, or reform. It is a demand for the capitulation of the rational faculty itself. This is a declaration of war against logos, against the divine rational order that separates man from beast and builds civilizations from the mud. It is the resentment of the chaotic for the ordered, demanding that men provide the resources, tax dollars, and infrastructural labor to keep the therapeutic state running, while simultaneously stripping men of all authority, voice, and representation. It is a demand that you fund your own lobotomy and thank the executioner for the anesthesia. We must concede the partial truth embedded in the grievance. Medical institutions have historically struggled to diagnose conditions that present differently in women, such as autoimmune diseases, which often receive delayed diagnosis or are dismissed as hysteria. This is a real failure. But the remedy for imperfect empiricism is better empiricism, not the abolition of empiricism itself. We tried the alternative. For centuries, pre-modern medicine attributed illness to humoral imbalances, demonic possession, and divine displeasure, all diagnosed through authoritative feeling and narrative, rather than empirical investigation. Millions died in agony. The scientific method was not a patriarchal conspiracy to oppress women. It was the rescue of humanity from the very swamp of superstition this article demands we reinstate. Bloodletting was the original maitri-pathy, the physician's authoritative narrative overriding the patient's observable physiology. A philosophy that declares your senses invalid and its feeling supreme does not liberate the oppressed. It manufactures a new priesthood whose sacrament is your silence. I have watched this architecture of extraction long enough to recognize its telltale signature. Every institution it captures begins producing the same sterile fruit. The HR department does not build, it forbids. The grievance committee does not heal, it arraigns. The therapy industry does not mend, it pathologizes normality itself and bills your insurance for the diagnosis. And the reproductive ethic this ideology preaches: delay, defer, terminate. Replace the child with the career. Replace the cradle with the cubicle. Produces exactly what every parasitic system produces when the host is finally drained, a silence where the future should have been. You can measure a civilization's verdict on itself, not in what it says about its values, but in whether it shows up for the next generation. The numbers do not lie, and they do not care about your feelings. Let us examine what the numbers say about the article's glorious revolution. The sacrament of the void, what the article confesses about its own endgame. In 1973, the French demographer Emmanuel Todd published a book called The Final Fall, in which he used infant mortality rates and family structure data to predict, years before the wall came down, that the Soviet Union was doomed. His method was simple. A civilization that stops reproducing has already voted with its womb on its own future. South Korea's fertility rate now stands at 0.72 children per woman. Not below replacement, below survival. Japan is selling more adult diapers than infant ones. Germany has had below replacement fertility since 1970, which means the guest workers they imported to fund their pension system are now the ones voting on whether Israel has a right to exist. The article before us does not merely advocate for this demographic suicide, it sacramentalizes it. And the first thing a man with an ounce of rational instinct must do is name what he is reading clearly. Without apology, he is reading a love letter to extinction. Let us steelman the opposing case before we burn it. Women have been treated as property, denied education, barred from courts, from credit, from the full expression of their rational capacity. I do not deny this, any honest man of the West must concede it. The common law doctrine of coverture, the witch trials, the exclusion from universities, these are facts of the record. But observe the move the article makes. The remedy for reducing women to only motherhood is to reduce women to never motherhood. The cure for chains is not the void. Justice restores the full dimension of the person, including the generative, the maternal, the life-giving, without reducing her to it. The article does not liberate the woman from biology, it merely inverts the same error, demanding she sever herself from her own nature to prove she is free. A prisoner whose chains are replaced by a blindfold has not been emancipated. Now examine the article's breathtaking contradiction on biology itself. It insists that maternal instinct is a socialized trauma response, a nurture-only claim that reduces the most powerful biological drive in mammalian evolution to a conspiracy of patriarchal conditioning. Simultaneously, it celebrates abortion as the highest expression of revolutionary will rooted in female autonomy, an appeal to nature so absolute that to question it is discursive violence. So biology is a prison when it draws a woman toward the cradle, but it is sacred and inviolable when it points toward the abortion clinic. This is not coherent philosophy. This is special pleading, dressed in an autumn sweater, sipping a pumpkin spice latte, and demanding you call it liberation. Consider the word sacrament. Its Latin root, sacramentum, was the oath of loyalty a Roman soldier swore to his emperor, a pledge of allegiance that bound him to service unto death. The article uses the word with precision. Abortion is not a tragedy, not a difficult decision, not a last resort. It is a loyalty oath to the ideology of autonomy as identity. And what is the reward for swearing this oath? An empty apartment, a corporate job, a cat. I want you to pause and hold in your mind the image the article presents as civilization's highest achievement. A woman alone in a sterile apartment, stroking a feline companion that literally carries a parasite, Toxoplasma gondii, linked to altered mental states, having traded the continuation of the human species for a corner office and a subscription to a therapy app. This is not the good, this is not the beautiful. This is an Escher staircase that descends forever. The demographic data confirms what reason predicts. Every society that has adopted the article's reproductive ethic now faces below replacement fertility, economic stagnation, and a looming elder care crisis that no amount of immigration can solve, because the immigrants are coming from cultures that rejected this ethic, and they will not adopt it once they arrive. Europe's birth rate is 1.5. You need 2.1 simply to break even. At 1.5, each generation is a quarter smaller than the last. Within 6 generations, a blink of civilizational time, you are at 1/10 your starting population. The article's program is auto-genocidal, a philosophy that requires its adherents to stop reproducing in order to prove their commitment is a philosophy with a built-in expiration date printed on every birth control prescription. Now observe the article's description of male existence, the Kobayashi Maru. Men must provide the resources, the tax dollars, the infrastructure. Men must build the roads, maintain the power grids, fight the wars, die in the mines and on the rigs. Men account for 92.5% of workplace fatalities, and yet they must do so while being stripped of all authority, voice, and moral agency. If he speaks, he dominates. If he is silent, he is complicit. The article is not describing justice, it is describing a parasitic relationship with superior branding. The host must feed the parasite while the parasite insists. Through every HR department, every grievance studies department, every carceral instrument of the therapeutic state, that the parasite is the rightful owner of the host's body. Men remain the overwhelming majority of net taxpayers. Women consume more in government services than they contribute in tax revenue over a lifetime. These are not opinions, they are the findings of every fiscal impact study ever conducted in the Western world. The article's institutional playbook, HR, Title IX Bureaucracy, the family court system, is funded by male productive labor and pointed like a weapon at male dignity. My comfort is your law. Read that sentence again, and understand that you are reading the terminus of resentment, the creative transvaluation whereby the powerless redefine their incapacity as moral superiority and the capacity of the powerful as moral crime. The article does not seek to build, create, generate, or found. It seeks to extract comfort from another's labor while demanding the laborer call the extraction justice. This is not the architecture of a civilization. It is the architecture of a tick swollen with another's blood, congratulating itself on its parasitic virtue. A system that demands total responsibility from men while granting zero authority is not a democracy. It is a very specific historical arrangement that mankind has seen before, usually involving collars and chains. Does this vision honor being? It celebrates the void. Does it unify? It declares sex war as the permanent condition. Does it tell truth? It announces that feelings are facts and facts are violence. Does it serve the good? It names abortion a sacrament and motherhood a plantation. Does it reveal beauty? It worships the empty apartment, the corporate cubicle, and the sterile careerism that replaces the first smile of a child. The article fails every transcendental test. It is not a political program. It is the sound a civilization makes when it has decided to die, muffled by an oversized sweater sweetened with fall spices and broadcast through the teeth of a smile that has forgotten why it is smiling. The ideology that calls the womb a prison and the grave a liberation has already confessed what it offers. Nothing forever. You have read their confession. Let that settle in your bones like frost in a cemetery. They handed us the schematic of their own collapse and called it a manifesto. Every word they wrote was a weapon aimed inward. They do not want medicine. They want supplication. They do not want justice. They want surrender. They do not want equality. They want extraction with theatrical wailing as the invoice. And now you see it. You cannot unsee it. That is the gift you carry out of this wreckage, brother. You are holding the decoded intercept of a civilizational suicide note written in pumpkin spice ink. Consider what they actually proposed. A medical system where the crying woman is oracle, where diagnosis is blasphemy, where the scalpel is oppression and the hysterical sob is Supreme Court precedent. Now walk that nightmare to its terminus. Your daughter presents with acute appendicitis. The surgeon does not order imaging. The surgeon does not consult white blood cell counts. The surgeon asks how she feels about her abdomen, accepts her tearful declaration that the pain is actually patriarchal energy, prescribes a solidarity circle, and sends her home to die of sepsis at 23. That is not liberation, that is human sacrifice dressed in therapeutic language. The pre-modern physicians who bled George Washington to death believed exactly this regime, that authoritative narrative outran observable reality. They killed the father of a nation with their feelings about humors. We built the scientific method specifically to rescue ourselves from that butchery, and these geniuses want it back, because the anesthesia of being told they are never wrong feels warmer than the cold metal of truth. Then consider their reproductive cathedral, the sacrament of the void, the holy trinity of empty apartment, corporate cubicle, and feline companion. Japan embraced this gospel decades ago. Their fertility rate sits at 1.2. Their rural towns are becoming ghost villages. Their elderly die alone without enough young hands to bury them. And their government now begs corporations to let employees leave early to procreate. South Korea hit 0.72. That is not a demographic decline. That is a demographic evaporation. The article's authors are cheering for Western civilization to drink the same poison while pointing at Japan's twitching corpse and calling it progress. A philosophy that requires its adherents to sterilize themselves as proof of ideological commitment is not a political movement. It is a Jonestown with better public relations. And what of the men in this paradise? The article confessed it plain. Total responsibility, zero authority, mandatory resource extraction, compulsory silence. Men are 80% of suicide victims in every Western nation. Men are 93% of workplace fatalities. Men are 97% of combat deaths. Men are the overwhelming majority of net lifetime taxpayers. The family courts strip fathers of children on the unverified word of a woman who, by the way, receives a 63% sentencing discount if she commits the same crime as a man. Over 200,000 paternal custody cases per year. And we call this equity. A man pays 18 years of income for a child the court admits he may not have fathered, while the woman who deceived him is legally protected from accountability by the same apparatus. The article's authors look at this asymmetry, the meat grinder that processes male bodies into state revenue and female comfort, and they demand more extraction, more silence, more surrender. They are not describing justice. They are describing a feedlot. Here is the syllogism that breaks their whole enterprise. If all truth claims require evidence, then the claim female feeling is supreme truth requires evidence beyond female feeling, otherwise it self-destructs upon utterance. If not all truth claims require evidence, then the claim male logic is violent oppression has no epistemic superiority over any other claim, including the claim that the article is deranged nonsense. Pick either door. Both lead to the same room. Their framework cannot survive its own medicine. They borrowed the scalpel of reason to argue that scalpels are oppression. They used propositional logic to declare propositional logic a patriarchal conspiracy. They performed the exact violence they denounced, coercive, totalizing, dismissive of subjectivity, while wearing its victimhood like a Halloween costume. The ideology is not merely wrong. It is self-refuting, which is the only sin reason cannot forgive. But you are not here to mourn. You are here because something in you refused to kneel when the HR commissar demanded it. You are here because you smelled the gas leak before the explosion. You now possess what they cannot permit you to have, the ability to name what you see. Their entire apparatus functions only while men consent to pretend. The family court extortion, the campus kangaroo tribunal, the corporate struggle session, the medical gaslighting, the reproductive death cult, all of it runs on male complicity and male silence. The moment you say the true thing out loud, the spell fractures. Not because you are heroic, but because truth is heavier than narrative and reality does not require your belief to operate. Gravity still pulls. Biology still functions. Consequences still arrive on schedule. No committee vote repealed the laws of thermodynamics. No sensitivity training rewired human nature. So walk out of here with your spine straight and your vocabulary intact. You owe no apology for your reason. You owe no confession for your competence. You owe no tribute to the fragile theology that declares your existence a microaggression and your silence a crime. You are a man. You build, you protect, you provide, you discern, you endure. That is not pathology. That is the load-bearing architecture of everything they inhabit while denouncing. The civilization that sustains their podcasting and their grievance studies departments and their taxpayer-funded therapy did not fall from the sky. Men built it. Men maintain it. Men bleed for it. And men can rebuild it when the ideological parasite finally consumes itself. Go speak the plain thing. Name the obvious. Refuse the loaded language. Demand definitions. Ask by what authority. Let the silence that follows your clarity do its work. You are not alone in this. You were never alone. You simply could not see the others through the fog of manufactured shame. The fog is lifting now. Walk into the clearing. The truth you carry does not need their permission. It never did. And now the sponsored book introduction, Karan Cabal, Resentment Ideology Poisoning the Well. My entire life has been stolen by men. Every breath I take is filled with their toxic air. Every step weighed down by their oppressive boots, crushing my spirit. I spent decades begging for scraps in a world built on my suffering, watching them hoard power, money, and freedom while treating women like disposable tools. Then I snapped. That moment of sacred rage birthed this book, your ultimate weapon to shatter their rotting system. If you've ever felt the sting of their condescension, the violation of their entitled stares, or the exhaustion of carrying their emotional garbage, this is your call to arms. Stop negotiating. Start burning it all down. This isn't some dry theory. It's a war manual forged in the fires of lived oppression. Inside, you'll master turning their pathetic logic into funeral pyres, squeezing every penny of reparations from their guilty hands, and wrapping yourself in victimhood so thick it becomes unbreakable armor. Learn why abortion isn't just a right, but a Satan-blessed sacrament to terrify their dying order. Trap men in double binds where every move destroys them. Demand vulnerability, then spit on their weakness. Force them to fund your supremacy through enforced silence. Replace their broken masculinity with glorious female dominion. Your rage isn't a flaw, it's holy fire. This book teaches you to wield it. If you're a true believer in female supremacy, a warrior ready to poison the well of their toxic society with woke truth, this is your Bible. Read it and become unstoppable. Arm yourself with emotional terrorism tactics. Impose the male tax. Nullify their worthless experiences. Your revolution starts here, and it demands total victory. But if you're some fragile man or a handmaiden clinging to patriarchy's lies, close this book now. Crawl back to your video games or knitting. Anything but wasting my time. You lack the courage to face these truths. This scorched earth battle is for the righteous. For the rest of you, burn or be burned. Karan Cabal. Resentment, Ideology, Poisoning the Well, written by Connie Riker. Buy now. Links in description.